Today I'm going to be discussing the new Judas Priest album, Firepower.
Walking through fire, fates in my hands, waiting for lightning to strike. Man on a wire, bearing the brand, waiting for lightning to strike. Lightning to strike.
So, Firepower by Judas Priest. It is Priest's 18th studio album, and it follows the 2014 album Redeemer of Souls. Redeemer of Souls was an album that I thought was good. I enjoyed it at the time a lot. I haven't had it for a while though, because looking back at it, it's not a great album. It's a good album, there's some good tracks in it. I really like Dragonaut, I like Redeemer of Souls, I like Halls of Valhalla. Halls of Valhalla is a great track. Beginning of the End's a good song to end the album on. Down in Flames is decent. There's some good songs on that album. However, it's not the greatest Priest album by any means, and I feel like Firepower has outdone Redeemer, and I thought Redeemer was decent as well. 18 albums in, and a lot of bands lose momentum when they get to, especially the 18th album. I mean, some bands lose momentum at like the 3rd album. But 18 albums in, Priest have gone through some highs, they've gone through some lows, but this album I'd say is a high, because I'd say it's Priest returning to, you know, how Priest should sound. And I know their last few albums have done that, however this is a fine example of how Priest should sound. I've seen a lot of comments online. Metal Hammer gave this album 9 out of 10 I think. I've seen a lot of comments out online that say this is the best album since Painkiller, which was 1990 I think. This is Painkiller, and Painkiller for me is one of Priest's finest albums. The title track especially, that's a metal masterpiece. And Nightcrawler was a great track as well. There's some cool songs on the Painkiller album, it's a good album. And I saw that and was like, okay, this must be a good album then, because in between there we've had Angel of Retribution, and that was 2005, that was when Halford rejoined the band on vocals after the Ripper Owens era. And Angel of Retribution was a killer album, one of the finest Priest albums since Halford's return I think, along with Firepower. And there's some killer tracks on that. Hellrider, Judas is Rising. Judas Rising's great, Hellrider's great, Angel's a good song as well. There's some cool songs again on that album, and I wasn't sure whether this album would top that, and I'm still deciding whether it has or not, although this is possibly their best album since Painkiller. It's definitely just as good, if not better, than Angel of Retribution. And 18 albums in, it's great to see Priest still releasing good music, like Saxon did a couple of weeks ago with Thunderbolt. I also reviewed that if you want to check that out. It's cool to see all these like old school bands like Priest and Saxon and Maiden still releasing good albums. 18 albums in, Firepower. Saxon just released their 22nd album I think, so, and these are both really good albums, so it's cool to see them still going strong. First of all, Firepower. The thing that I instantly noticed with Firepower was the production was better than Redeemer. The production on Redeemer is not bad, I just felt like it was a little flat and it sort of took away from the album a little bit. I feel like Redeemer could have, if it had better production, the album really could have benefited, because there's some cool riffs and stuff on that album. I just feel like the guitars felt a bit flat and it felt a little bit lifeless compared to Firepower. Firepower, this album is bursting with life. Produced by Andy Sneap, who recently did Saxon's album Thunderbolt. Firepower really bursts with life and it sounds a fantastic album. The production's still got a little bit of an old school vibe to it. It's strange, it sounds modern, but it's got an old school vibe to it as well, which I like. So I feel like Priest should have an old school vibe to their music, because it's like an old school new wave of British heavy metal style, and this album really sort of combines that sort of British Steel era with the Painkiller era, and there's some stuff on here that's really Painkiller sort of esque, like the first track on here called Firepower, the self-titled track on the album. This is very Painkiller-esque, which I don't see as a bad thing. This is a killer track, one of my favourites on the album, the first song on here. Great double bass parts from Scott Travis as well. The chorus to this song is fantastic. The verses are sort of, they're okay, they're not bad. They're a bit sort of generic and just okay, and the chorus really makes up for that with a really big Painkiller vibe. Really cool chorus. Halford's still sounding great on here. Great double bass parts from Scott Travis, and this is a cool start to the album. It instantly sounds like Priest. After that first riff kicks in, there's a high scream from Halford, and it's just like, it instantly feels like Priest, and I think that's key to this album, like any other Priest album, because you kind of know what you're going to get with a Judas Priest album now. Nothing really comes as a shock on a Priest album, and that's fine. Some bands are meant to stick to their sound, and like Saxon. I know Priest have done a lot of different albums. They did like Turbo Lover and Painkiller, and they sound very different. But the last few Priest albums have sounded similar, and that's fine. But you kind of know what you're going to get. Lightning Strikes was one of the singles. That's the next song on the album. I saw a lot of comments saying this was a really great song. I don't think it is. It's an okay song. It's got a decent riff at the start. It had a really cheesy video that got released with it. It gives me a bit of a Redeemer of Souls vibe as well, which is alright. I like Redeemer. This is a decent track. It doesn't really do anything for me, but it's a good song. It's not bad by any means. And then it leads into Evil Never Dies, which I saw a couple of comments saying was a highlight on the album for some people, which I agree, because it is a cool song. It's got a really cool heavy riff to start off with. I've got to give Richie Faulkner credit here while I think about it for his playing on this album. He stepped into a really difficult role, replacing KK Downing, the legendary Priest guitarist, and he's done a really, really great job. And this is his second album with the band. His first was Redeemer, and this album, he's really, really stepped it up and proved himself really well on this album. Great playing on this record, some great riffs from him there. And it's cool to see him and Glenn working really well together. But it is really unfortunate hearing about Glenn's illness. He has Parkinson's, if you're not aware of that, and he's had to pull out of the tour because of it. So I wish all the best to him, the legend. But Evil Never Dies, when I'm on it. It's a cool song. It's got a cool riff. It's got a quiet bridge. It's got a cool quiet bridge, but it leads into this great solo, and it's just a cool track on the album. And then there's another single called Never the Heroes, which was a bit slower than the first three tracks on the album. It's got quite simple verses, which I like. It's quite simple verses, but it builds into this big sort of anthemic chorus. And it's a cool track. It's Priest sort of doing a less sort of Painkiller-esque vibe, and it gives me a little bit more of like a British Steel vibe, but it's a really cool track again. And we go to Necromancer, which was one of the more fast-paced tracks on the album. It's got very cheesy lyrics, but I don't mind that. It's a Priest album. It's allowed to be cheesy. Like raising the dead up from the ground and things like that. It's a cheesy track, but it's a cool song as well. It's got quite an atmospheric intro with the riff, and there's some like atmospheric sort of voices and things over the top. That's quite cool. It's got a classic Priest song as well. It's got a very classic vibe to it, and I think that's a key theme throughout this album. There's a lot of classic old school vibes going on, and I like that. We're then going to Children of the Sun, which was an okay song. It's not one of my favourites on the album. It's a bit slower again, and it gives me more of a British Steel vibe. I love British Steel, don't get me wrong, but this song it's okay. It's not bad by any means. It's just, it's not very memorable, but it's an okay song. Next is Guardians, which was a little bit of an interlude, about a minute long. It's got a little bit of piano at the start, and it's got even though it's a little interlude, it's got a classic Priest vibe with like the guitar leads in the background, and it transitions really nicely into Rising from Ruins, which was another sort of slower, sort of more chuggy song. It's not really chuggy, but you know what I'm trying to say. And it's got cool lead parts on the intro again, before turning into a classic heavy metal riff, turning into another Judas Priest classic riff. It's got quite soft verses that build into a big classic Priest chorus, and this is an alright song again. Then we're going to Flamethrower, again another classic Priest riff, and sort of vibe and feel to it. I felt like this chorus was fairly weak. Like Rob sounds fantastic on this album. His voice sounds fucking good still, and all the love and respect for him. I'm just not a massive fan of the vocal lines on the chorus. They're like the flamethrower part, and he sounds great throughout the rest of the song, but it's a bit of a weak chorus, and it's not one of the best on the album, but it's a cool song. It's got another cool riff, and Halford sounds great as a whole, and it's an okay song. It just doesn't really do anything for me that much. Then there's Spectre, which was a new single that come out. There's a video for it that come out today with the album. I prefer as a whole. I prefer like quicker Priest songs, but I sort of love this melodic groove that's going on at the start of this song. Really cool sort of melodic metal riff going on. However, it's a nothing special track. It's decent, but it doesn't really grab me and captivate me like some of the other tracks on this album do, such as Traitors Gate, the next song. This is a better track for me. It's got a really cool big chorus again, another great Priest chorus. Rob sounds awesome on this song. Great vocal delivery, great vocal performance from Halford. He's still sounding great, so lots of love and respect for him. This also has quite a cool solo on this track. And Traitors Gate's another good song. It's got a bit more of an old school Priest vibe again. Maybe a little bit of a Painkiller vibe on there. And really cool song. And then we're going to No Surrender, which is shorter. It's under 3 minutes, about 2 minutes 50. It's like a cheesy, positive track, and I like that on a Priest album. Like, unlike United, because that I didn't like. That was just overly cheesy. But this is again, it's a classic Priest like song sort of vibe. It's short, it's snappy, and it just works quite well on the album. Because Traitors Gate's about 5 minutes. The next song, Lone Wolf's quite long as well. It's 5 minutes, and I think it's just over 5 minutes actually. So this sort of shorter track in the middle works quite well. It's very punchy, and it just does its job in that position quite well. Then we go to Lone Wolf. Now, for me, Lone Wolf was one of the weakest tracks on the album. It's not a bad track. In fact, the last minute of it's actually quite cool. It's just like, the album's about an hour long. I think it's like 58 minutes. So this song could have been cut. It's not a bad song by any means. It's an okay song, but I just feel like it sort of drags on a little bit. It doesn't really take you anywhere in its duration. Another decent riff, but I think they could have ended the album on sort of another faster track before they go into the final track on the album, which is a more softer one. However, I feel like one more track here, which was faster and more, I don't know, just more up tempo, more fast paced, and a little bit like the title track, Fire, and a bit like the title track, Firepower. And I just feel like this. It was an okay song, don't get me wrong, I'm not hating on it. It's an okay song for what it is. I just think it would have been cooler to have a heavier track in there, maybe. Even if they cut it out and just left it as No Surrender in there, because No Surrender is quite a cool, 3 minute, just punchy track. And Lone Wolf just sort of drags on a little bit, not quite like Loch Ness does, but it's just, I just feel like they could have ended it a little bit stronger, but it's not a bad song. I feel like I spoke a little bit too negative about it. I just feel like it's a bit strange hearing Priest do something like, I don't know how the really slow sort of chuggy sort of riff suits Priest, but it's an okay track. Before we go into Sea of Red, which is one of my favourite tracks on the album to end it with. It's just under 6 minutes, and I thought Beginning of the End on Redeemer was a good end to the album. It's very soft throughout, and it was a big sort of a ballad that you could sing along to, and it was a cool sort of really soft end to Redeemer of Souls. But this is a step up. This is a great ballad to end the album on. It starts off as a ballad and then builds into this classic Priest track. It's just under 6 minutes long. I think it's 5 minutes 50 something. And it begins acoustic. And I was thinking, okay, they're going for another acoustic ending to the album. I know the last track on Redeemer, called Beginning of the End, I know that wasn't acoustic all the way through, but I was like, okay, they're going for another softer track like that. Maybe it'll build up into something a little more. But it builds into this big sounding track, very atmospheric, which I loved. I actually turned it up just to hear that. The riff was really cool, and it had all these atmospheric sort of opera-like voices over the top of the riff, and it was like, wow, that is how I imagine Priest. That was awesome. This song has a fantastic chorus. It's got a cool riff, really cool, classic metal riff with these atmospheric vocals over the top. I love this atmospheric vibe going on over that riff. Really, really cool. I feel like the song ends a little abruptly, but it doesn't really matter because it's got a cool riff section to go out with, and this is a really great end to the album. One of the finest tracks on the album for me personally. People may disagree with that, that's fine. However, I thought Sea of Red was a really great album. The way the first like 2 minutes maybe are acoustic, and it slowly builds up into this fantastic track with a really cool riff and these great atmospheric parts, and it's just a really, really cool song to end the album on. And yeah, I think that this album is a good album. I feel like it's a lot. Still feel like it's stronger than Redeemer. This is a really nice Priest album. This is a good Priest album. There's obviously been a lot of speculation with Glenn Tipton's illness if the band are going to continue, because obviously KK's not in them anymore. They carried on with Richie, but if Glenn's now pulled out, there's a lot of speculation because he's played on all of their albums since the first one. And there's a lot of, there's a lot of things going around on the internet and everything, but the band will have to make that decision. I know Halford's come out recently and said that he's got no plans of retiring Priest and they're going to keep going, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But if it turns out that this is the last Priest album, and this is the last time we press play on a fresh new batch of Priest songs, it's a good one to go out on. This is a fine album. I believe it is their best one since Painkiller, along with Angel of Retribution. And this is a good Priest album. It really is. I think I'm going to give this album a 3.5 out of 5, like I did for Thunderbolt. Good album. There's some really, really cool songs on here. I think my favourites being Firepower, Evil Never Dies, and Traitors Gate, and Sea of Red. There's some really cool tracks on there. I think there's some weaker ones as well. Lone Wolf's just okay. Flamethrower's okay. It's just like there's some really, really cool tracks on there. Although you kind of knew what you're going to get with the Priest album now. I don't mind that. You knew, like it's the same when Motorhead were around, and I'm a huge Motorhead fan. But I really like this album for what it is. Again, it's an album that I won't listen to every day. I might come back to it once in a while, but there's some cool tracks on there. And if it is the last time we get to hear a new Priest album, then I think this is a good one to bow out on. However, you never know. Like, we'll see where it goes from here, in all honesty. But gotta thank Priest while I'm there as well, because they've been a huge part of the metal community and the metal genre. And 18 albums in, and they've just released another solid album, and all love and respect to them, man. So what is your thoughts on this new Priest album called Firepower, their 18th studio album? What is your opinion on it? I want to know what your opinion is on Firepower, because I've seen a lot of comments online saying, wow, this is incredible, this is an incredible Priest album, and I've seen a lot of comments saying it's a bit generic and it's a bit samey. But I want to hear your thoughts as fellow Priest fans. As a Priest fan myself, I like this album a lot. There's some really cool tracks on here, and there's a couple of like more weaker ones as well, but as a whole, this is a good album. This is the best Priest album we've heard in a long time. I'll definitely rate it over Redeemer of Souls. I'll definitely rate it over Nostradamus, and possibly over Angel of Retribution as well, because I haven't listened to that in a long time, and I think this is a really, really strong album that Priest have made here, and I really like it. So let me know what you think, fellow Priest fans. I want to hear your thoughts on Firepower, and thank you for watching. I've got other reviews up on the channel if you're interested. I put one up also of a very different album today, which also came out with Miles Kennedy from Alter Bridge's new album, the solo album. If you're interested in that, then go and check that out. I've also got Machine Head, Saxon, if you're interested in Saxon's Thunderbolt album review, go and check out that. I've also got like Wasp and Gojira and all sorts, and although this is a new channel, I'm going to keep uploading regularly, and I want to see what you guys think of this album, and if there's any more albums you want me to review or check out, whether that's Priest or any artist, let me know. So yeah, thank you for watching. Share your views on Firepower.